Teacher Gamer Revolution. What we're talking about is wild mind training. What? Wild what? Wild mind training. Wild what? I'm talking wild mind training. Wild mind training. Wild mind training. You know what?
Welcome to Season 3 of the Teacher Gamer Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Resnichek, and I'm thrilled to be sharing upcoming interviews with some of the most dedicated adventurers, educators, and artists on the planet. Today, we're honored to introduce Shawn Thomas O'Docharty, a creative leader and cross-cultural producer with over 25 years of experience directing immersive arts programs, theatrical productions, and strategic cultural initiatives. From refugee camp stages to global festivals, Shawn has designed and led transformative projects across continents, blending performance, design, education, and storytelling into bold, impactful experiences. In this episode, we'll explore how Shawn's innovative approach uses playfulness to guide adolescents towards self-discovery and the development of essential life skills.
So we get to dive into his process and how he brings art, theater, and his background experience as a professional mime and a street performer into the improvisational world of bringing out the best and most interesting things in kids and really pushing them to expand past their comfort zones. So I feel like this is a great place to kind of start branching out in other directions around the teacher gamer idea, around passionate teachers. Also, next week, we're going to have Michael Franti, who's also, as many of you know, an incredible musician whose career goes back to the 1980s, where I discuss with him historically his process around being playful and really exploring life as an artist and going for things that inspire him to push himself into and his band members and other artists to really harness their passions, be playful, have a positive outlook, and experience life in such a way that is unique and something to always bring a context of great honor and respect for learning things from mentors. Mentorship plays a big role in our conversation, and it was just wonderful to catch up with him.
If you like what you're hearing and you want to join my upcoming Teacher Gamer training sessions, not only do you get a copy of the book in the introductory course, but if you sign up now, you will also get the Teacher Gamer Dungeon Master screen absolutely free. If you have any questions or you want to set up a quick chat, please email me at zach@teachergamer.com. With no further ado, let's get into...
Ladies and gentlemen, announcing in this corner, Wang and it's 70 kilos, the undefeated champ. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, what's going on?
Hey,
Brother.
lovely. Amazing to see you, Shawn. Shawn Thomas O'Docharty, teacher, dramatist, mime, highly trained, well experienced, everything from in the streets, in the subways, Parisian, trained by, help me with his name.
I trained with in the school of Jacques Lecoq in France. I attended the year that Lecoq passed, actually. Jacques Lecoq was one of the great theater pedagogues of the last century, really. I mean, there's some great ones, maybe Jerzy Grotowski, more of a director, but Peter Brook, Mayer Hold, you know, there's some really good ones. But Lecoq, I think, was really big because he founded the school in Paris, and he was, in that direct descendant from Etienne Decroix, I can never pronounce his last name, actually. And then who was that French actor who played the mime in Les Enfants du Paradis, Children of Paradise? You know the one I'm talking about, who plays the mime in that film? What is that?
I'm going to. I don't know.
Jean-Louis Barrault, I think.
Thank you.
That was my teacher. That was my teacher, and I very much was inspired by his style and his school, his philosophy. They really, I think, I had studied acting first in New York, but when I went to Paris to study at the Lecoq School, I kind of tossed everything out the window, because in New York, I felt like they were training us in that very actor studio and that American tradition of kind of New York stage actors, which has got so much power and beauty. But I think I was looking for something different in my training. I'm glad I have that in my repertoire. But in France, I think is where I really learned, working in the Lecoq School, is where I really learned to understand what it means to be an artist, as opposed to a quote unquote actor. Yeah. A little different there, more of a school.
I appreciate that. And I think that's one of the things that I've always found interesting about you also, that you have really spread yourself across the globe, having grown up in Alaska and then made your way down to California. Am I right in that?
And San Francisco, yeah. I would say that is my kind of spiritual home in the United States, is the Bay Area, Northern California. Came down to Northern California at 16. And I went to school there in Santa Cruz, and then I transferred to Sarah Lawrence in New York, and I studied acting at Sarah Lawrence, teaching and writing.
There you go. So the trajectory started you on the West Coast, brought you to the East Coast, then took you across the Atlantic, and then you've ventured further on into India.
Did some work throughout Africa. We toured through about 13 countries in Africa, I think, with the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with my first theater company, Imibala Theater & Co., that I founded with South African John Zwilitini Tomo from Soweto, and Naomi Smith, Afrikaner from Johannesburg, Karine Chalon from Dijon, and Jonathan Gunning from Galway, Ireland. And so we toured through Africa. And when that gig was done, then later in life, I found myself going to India, which was my first kind of formal teaching gig, working in international schools to found the theater program there, their first theater program. So yeah, it's been a good little jaunt. I've now been kind of working in international schools for about a decade. And I don't know that I have really the gumption to work in an American high school. That seems pretty strong in terms of the kind of maybe the politics of an American high school, socially and administratively and all that kind of stuff. But I think an international school is, probably the same way. It's a little mini society. Right? Any little school is its own little culture and society. But there's something a little different I think I like about working in like an international school. I don't think I'd be able to cut the mustard in an American high school. I think that work would just devour me. I have such respect for those teachers, and everything they have to go through to actually teach. It seems like a tall order. It seems like a tall order for not a tremendous amount of appreciation and not a tremendous amount of remuneration. But maybe after having kids home for the last year and a half, Americans can reassess how much they value their teachers after they see what we've been doing every day with their kids day in and day out, and they've had to deal with it themselves. Maybe there may be a moment of reckoning for the value of education and teachers, right?
Well, a lot of celebrity posters, I mean, and I'm not even that into celebrities, but it's leaked in definitely over the last year, where you see in the news even how celebrities are dealing with their kids stuck at home, because they're usually used to their kids going off to some international school or some awesome boarding school or some, wherever it is, or having, and even they are strapped with having to, manage their kids. And so yeah, it's affecting all levels of life. And this is sort of a random aside, just because I don't see us really talking about COVID. However, today when I was in my mindfulness lesson and we were watching a bit of The Last Samurai,
which is that with your man? Is that with your man?
My man?
Yeah, the man.
The man, my man. Okay, my man. Yeah, my man. The man. Tom Cruise is in there.
Tom Cruise. Yes.
So So
Tom
he's
known for
they're
the
kind of
very worst Irish accent.
he's there. He's doing some heavy attacking. He's really pissed off, and it's a setup, right? It's a setup. It's a prestige where we see that Tom Cruise, the American who's been captured, warrior, mercenary, is now been taken off to this small Japanese township where he's learning their ways kind of and breaking down his programmation. So we get to see him fighting a very intense and angry and frustrated battle, right? And so
He's good at that. I think Tom Cruise is especially good at angry and frustrated.
okay, yeah. And so actually we see that very, very expressive. And then the kids then have to kind of write down after, of course, we've just been talking about Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, and other really great Phil Jackson, the coach of both the Bulls and the Lakers, and interviewed by Oprah, and other kinds of experiences where we're looking at mindfulness being taken through meditation, calm focus to try to get peak performance, to try to get effortless excellence, and a whole bunch of other calm confidence and other alliterative ideas that we're trying to get into kids, why you would want to take some time, take some pause. And at some point, one child says to me, he says, "What is an enemy?" Because it's something it says about how Tom Cruise is facing his enemy. Mm-hmm. And I said something to the effect of, well, your enemy is anything that wants to stop you from doing what you want to do or need to do, where you're going, or try to break down what you think is good.
Talking about the relaxation, I was, I've been starting all of my acting classes, my theater arts classes, with them on the ground, taking like really just a kind of a time out of their lives to connect with the physical sensations of their own body, their own thought processes, their breath, the sounds around them. And, it occurred to me a few days ago, I was like, do they know why we're doing this? Have I explained to them, why are we doing this? And isn't this kind of weird? I mean, you don't do that. You don't walk into a math class and lie down on the floor. And I always kind of marvel. It's one of the reasons why I love to teach acting and theater so much, performance, is that you get to have moments like that where you are talking with your students about their breath, about their life, about their sense of self, about the sensations in their toes or their fingertips, and it really feels to me like a privileged moment to be able to have that conversation with anyone, more or less. Some young people who you're working with, who have a respect for you and who are kind of open to your ideas, and to considering your ideas or your proposal,
Yeah, it's wonderful. It is an opportunity. And I think that this is where we kind of bridge. And what I want to say, the theme or kind of purpose of today's meeting is to meet Shawn Doherty, someone who I consider to be in the realm of the teacher gamer, and that you have this playfulness about you. You get people to play, whether that's in the moment, whether that's for something long-term. You put on plays. I've seen productions you put on. My son, I don't know if my son's, but at least my son has been in multiple plays with you at the helm at Green School.
Your son was the lead roles, right?
Yeah.
Lead role. I think, play is central to what I do. I have not necessarily integrated gaming in the same way that, teachers like yourself or Jesse Driver or no one have brought into the classroom, but in a kind of a different fashion. Play, I would say, is part and parcel to what I do. It is central to everything, to my philosophy about teaching, my philosophy about life, and I would say even kind of, my spirituality. It's one of the reasons why I practice Hinduism. In Hinduism, there's the central idea that the universe itself is play. It's a play being put on by the universe for its own amusement and its own enjoyment, which I have to say, I just love that idea.
That is lovely. And I also would like to say that a big theme of today, so also for our listeners, you can catch Noan Fenu and also Jesse Driver in other podcasts. Check out the links below for their podcasts as well. We have all been colleagues from Green School Bali and have been friends for many years. I would like to also say that a big point of this podcast or interview conversation is we're trying to determine here if Shawn would be a good co-host for me in some, if not all, or a number of other Teacher Gamer podcasts, especially because he brings a specialization in theater, in play, in mime, in art, and a lot of other things. And so I really appreciate that about you, Shawn.
Oh, thank you so much, Zach. You've always been an amazing friend, and always deep respect for you as well as a colleague. Your ideas, I find them to be fascinating and engaging. So thank you, Mr. Zach.
You betcha. I also think that you bring out a nice comedy element for me, humor. I think we share wit, probably based on our original origins in the West Coast and our American background, but also the background to go out further, to really look at life through an anthropological lens. I think we're also very versed from our backgrounds in human rights and interests in equity. And I also believe in feminism as well, and in studies of ancient cultures, as well as political philosophies and philosophy. I think that we are kindred spirits cut from the same cloth in some ways that allow us to keep each other in check, which I think is also really important, but also complement each other as we explore what it is to bring play into teaching, and also with our background in pedagogy, education, and an interest in what is authentic learning, with mindfulness practices, both also very varied. Yes, the main thing for me is that we share a lot of strong, similar traits and background, but also a diversity that hopefully will have us representing as well as we can. And I think that we're also both pretty good at, when we can't represent something, to say we don't know.
Generally just like to lie and fake my way through it. Scalpel, retractors. No, I've got this. It's cool. Sponge, please.
Improvise.
What do we do with the sponge again? Oh yeah, it's for my forehead. Yeah, go. Sponge.
Yeah. So this is great. And I want to actually jump into something that you said earlier. We both grew up in the American school system, and you said hats off to those who are actually teaching in it.
I mean, that seems to me, I feel like we get a bit spoiled as international teachers because we're dealing with a different set of circumstances than, like an American public school. I think they have a very tall order with what they're trying to pull off.
What's your experience yourself going to school as a young American back in the day?
This is a little bit of the misnomer maybe in my experience, is that I really don't have a lot. I went through grade school and I got into middle school. I think I finished my 6th grade year. And that was the last year of American public school that I finished, was my 6th grade year until my freshman year of university. So, I mean, I intermittently, I think I attended a few weeks here of 11th grade. I enrolled myself in Lincoln High in Riverside, where I ended up. But that's it. I mean, that's it. A few weeks. And when I went to the American public school after having been largely on my own, from adolescence up until 16, I was like, this is insane. Like, I have to raise my hand to speak, and I have to get a block of wood in a bathroom pass to urinate. Like, I'm treated like I have no agency. Socially, the scene between myself and other students, I was just, I've been on my years already to try to relate to some American kids. I was like, oh man, I gotta check out of here, dude. I think I went there for 2 weeks and I was like, it's cool. I'll just drop out of school. I don't need to. That is the long and the short of my personal experience in American high school. I do have friends who teach in high school, and I have friends who send their kids to school. And of course, my niece and nephew are in Windsor, California, Santa Rosa. It is no short order to be a teacher in an American high school or to be a student in an American school by any means. It's rife with challenge. Maybe not much challenge, that's what's funny. It's not that there's any less challenge or any more challenge than anywhere else. The challenges are just different. There's not, having been now through 40, maybe 43, 44 countries, I would not say that it's better anywhere that I've been. There are places that correspond more to who I am and to my own taste. And there are places that correspond less to who I am and my own personal taste, where the problems and the challenges and the gifts that the place gives as well, which are true with any place, right? That's the place that I found most corresponded to my personal taste and my personal needs.
And why did you jump out to Phnom Penh?
Primarily because of economic reasons. The salary that I was making in Bali was not going to allow me to put my kids through university. So I was like, well, we've got to move somewhere for a few years to make some money and put it away, so that in 15 years from now, we can actually send our kids to a university if that's what they want, or give them money to start a business or, something like that.
How responsible of you?
Well, I have not been that way most of my life. It's relatively new that I have a family and am married. My son is 5 and my daughter is almost 3 in a couple of days. So it's still quite new to me, relatively, in the sense of it. But you got to, I think, any parent knows that you have to make some decisions that are not based on what you want necessarily for yourself, but what you'd like to achieve for your kids.
That's beautiful. And so in a sense, you're playing the game. We're talking about the financial game, which is life. This is part of life. This is part of giving our students a sense of perspective, or learners, or the people around us, a sense of perspective. Yeah, I like to zoom in on some different kind of life skills that I feel like games, play, theater, art, things that let's call them opportunities that develop into skills.
Yeah, let's do it.
What do you reckon are the 5 to 10 main skills, life skills, or social emotional skills, soft skills, as they might be called, that run through like undercurrents in your teaching, regardless of what class?
One is maybe number one is humor. Humor and laughter, because humor and laughter, comedy, these things bring levity, and levity, a certain lightness, and that lightness is key for happiness, because everything else is so goddamn heavy. The world is heavy, life is heavy, and we've got to have the ability to laugh at ourselves, to laugh with each other in a way which is not mean-spirited, to laugh at each other, and to laugh really at the absurdity of the human experience. We are on this little tiny grain of dust flowing through a seemingly infinite number of galaxies. We have this just really like a blink to live. In one breath, we are born, mature, fall in love, fall out of love, fall back in love, grow old and die. Boom, gone. And yet somehow this experience that we have of being alive, it means everything. It means there's nothing else, right? There's nothing else but the one existence that we know we have and we experience now. So that sense of humor to me is central. The ability to love. Another might be the ability of the imagination, right? The ability of the skill of the imagination to see beyond what is just right in front of our nose, to see the possibility that lies in the things that are in front of our nose, possibilities that have not yet been explained to us or revealed to us, to be able to use that sense of creative vision to imagine, to dream, to reconfigure to go beyond, right? What is just evident prima facie, And then if I was to say a third beyond the imagination, I would say flexibility, to be flexible, to be versatile, to have more than one bag of tricks, to have several different bags of tricks for different moments. So that kind of versatility, that flexibility, with that flexibility, I would say being able to go with the flow, to get a sense for the direction of flow, to get a sense for to read the room, as it were, in one's own life, in an actual room, in a situation, in a relationship, and to be able to not fight against what is, but to work with what is, right, in front of you.
So can we,
not what we wish it could be.
Adaptability, am I putting a word in your mouth, or would you say that that's part of it?
Yeah, adaptability, to be able to, Carlos Castaneda's, whether he's, whether he really lived those experiences or whether they were fabricated, right, in all of the Don Juan books. He had this idea from the teacher, this Mexican indigenous teacher, Don Juan, to become your surroundings. And so I would say not just adaptability, but like supreme adaptability. Can you learn a new culture? Can you learn a new language? Can you learn a new way of being? Can you learn a new style of working? Can you learn a new style of expressing? All of those kind of things. Can you learn a new style of living and yet still not lose yourself not lose your sense of center or your sense of values or a vision in your camouflaging or becoming your surroundings,
I love it.
So
the profoundness of what you just said feels like it touches so many of who I think of as my mentors. What was it? Become your surroundings.
Become your surroundings, yeah. To become your surroundings.
Carlos Castaneda, what a character, and what a set of books. I find them very imaginative. They inspire the imagination more than I think they are a true pedagogy, so to speak.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't.
But I love this. I love this because another thing is exploring metaphor. A big thing for me about imagination is exploring metaphor, and I really like how you brought out this idea of flexibility and versatility and supreme adaptability. That even though you could go, and this kind of comes from my background too, and what my mentor Tom Ringelman shared with me was, how do you become a complete infiltrator and go deep, because as everybody can see with my look, I've got this big, crazy hair, usually a beard. And, he would say to me, what would it be like for you just to cut your hair and shave everything down and pick up a briefcase and put on a suit and just become a wolf and in sheep's clothing? Like, could you do it? Could you actually infiltrate without, but this is the point that you're bringing, without losing your own identity inwardly, right? How could you actually shift in a extreme adaptability to the situation, be full versatile without feeling like you would lose your own identity? And I want to point out for RPG fans out there that there is an old 1980s or even late 1970s spy RPG role-playing game called Top Secret, and there was the infiltrator class, and I think it was in this game, or it might have been in another one, maybe it was in some kind of a prestige class of Dungeons and Dragons or something, but the infiltrator who was trying to infiltrate into another culture as an actual spy had, over years, they would have to roll percentile dice to see if they actually converted to the other side,
over time, right?
Or they lost connection with themselves. So there is that kind of gamble. Like, if the more I give over to being a spy, or the more I act like something else, the more I actually give over my identity. So I really love this. Again, this is the playful imagination of games, which also help us discover and help children and learners discover limitations,
Mhm.
give us some sense of like, yeah, how much will you give over? And I think we've seen somebody like Jim Carrey, for example, give over himself into the role of the biographical role of, help me out,
Yeah, Andy Kaufman.
of Andy Kaufman, to the point where there's even a making of Andy and Me, or is it called Andy and Me? One of them, anyway, there's a whole documentary of what it was for him to give over himself into the Andy Kaufman role. We've also seen the same thing happen with Joaquin Phoenix, although I found that to be a little more dicey, a little less true to life. I wasn't quite sure where he kind of gave up being Joaquin Phoenix, the actor, and became a hip hop rapper. Did you ever see that one?
No, I did not see that. As an actor, we often kind of we always kind of think about this idea, and I think that's it's funny. I don't know what Jim Carrey's training is. He certainly has a tremendous amount of experience as an actor, but I don't know what his training is so much, because part of the art is not doing that. Part of the art of acting is not losing yourself, being able to create and invoke that character within yourself without becoming mentally unstable, unhinged, or being kind of absorbed by the character you're playing. And so, we kind of have this in the mythos of actors. Oh, the actor who, went so deep that he lost himself in the role, right? It's kind of like, but it's a little bit of a bit silly to me.
Cliche or what?
A bit contrived.
Okay. Yeah, I hear you.
Contrived. It doesn't really feel to me like, I know it's possible. You can run yourself through all kinds of trips in your head, right? I am Jesus, I am Krishna, grab him with the butterfly net. You can go all kinds of places in the mind. But as an actor, I feel like part of the training is learning not to do that, learning to pour yourself like water into the role and into the circumstances of that person.
Break that down for me. When you have kids and you're teaching, just give me some basic steps, or for our teachers here, when you're playing with a role play, or you're playing with role, or you're trying to break down what it is, and what is it that, and what kind of advice do you give to going deep into the role, but somehow keeping a piece of yourself there? Do you keep a piece of yourself there, or are you just are you hanging yourself up on the cloak?
I think that's a little bit the misunderstanding of acting. You are always yourself. You are always yourself in the given circumstances of that human, of that time. It's the Russian acting teacher Stanislavski, who's really the first one Konstantin Stanislavski, who's really the first one to ever think about like what is a method of acting and where we get the term method acting from. He had this idea of the magic if. If the face on the wall behind you, Zach, suddenly came to life and started speaking to you, how would you react? If the room was on fire, how would you react? Really, not like, making a big show and rolling your eyes and, and jumping up and down, but what would you honestly do? And kind of retrieving those sensations and those memories, right? So the very first thing I do with my students is I really get them connected to who they are, who they feel themselves to be. Where are their emotions? How are they carrying their body? Are they in front of their center or behind their center? Are they in collapse? Are they hyperextending, trying too hard, right? Where to get that, and then to bring them some sense of neutrality. So you can have a blank canvas to begin putting colors on. And the colors then are the magical if, right? If I was Andy Kaufman, and if I was in these circumstances, and if I had his upbringing, and if I were his characters, how would I portray him, right? Really having a sense of who you are and a really intense and intimate knowledge of how you operate your psychology, the sensation of your life experience and how you experience life. That is, I think, central to creating a character. You are listening to your own intuition and your reactions, and in these given set of circumstances. So I first try to bring the actor to neutrality and to understand what is neutral. And from neutral, beginning to then add colors on the palette, or sensations, or age, or physical limitations, or mental neuroses, whatever it is, right? But first you start with neutral and a really, really grounded sense of self. Then you start to add things on top of it, always with the ability to dial it back down to neutral, right? Okay, yeah, let it go, boom, and it's gone, right? Back, oh, here I am, just acting, right? And so, yeah, that's the kind of a little bit of the process of play that we go through, and getting them also to communicate not only with themselves about themselves, but with each other about themselves, to be able to communicate their needs, to be able to communicate their fears, to be able to communicate their boundaries, so that we can create a stable place for the work to happen. No one is able to take risks and try new things or new characters or new situations or scenarios if they feel unsafe, if they feel like they really can't go into those deep parts of themselves. And I think that's really the place of the teacher or of the guide to, you know, the referee, the what do you call it in role-playing games?
Dungeon master.
Dungeon master, totally, dude. The dungeon master is like the director on a set, you know? Yeah, the director and the playwright and the dramaturg all rolled up in one, right?
Yeah, it's the master of the setting, the master of, well, kind of, as you say, actually, we do use the word referee. Dungeon master originally was so much related to Dungeons and Dragons. Then, because of many games, it became the game master, which is okay. But I think now, as a colloquial and overall term, DM, actually, I think we have dungeon master, but also dungeon, it's such a weird word, which is great because it always
got mixed with so many references, right?
It's like, what? Dungeon master? What? It sounds so freaked out in some ears, but the DM, it's now basically known as the DM, and it just, as you say, it's the referee, it's the playwright of the overall story, but also, and that's something I'd like to ask you about too. How do you feel when you make a play or you run a production? What are the opportunities that learners, students, actors, whomever you're working with, have the opportunity to co-write what they're doing with you? Where is their co-writing opportunity and agency?
You know, I really try to limit that and just turn them into automatons who will do my bidding. And listen, kid, I know you have an idea. You want to do this or that. Just please, no, go over there. Do what I tell you. Right? Listen, I know you have a lot of intuition. Just stop listening to that. Do what you're told, please. Of course, you know, I'm fooling.
Say it ain't so.
It's always, you know, it's difficult with younger actors because they don't have as much experience making propositions. So they don't have as much experience in kind of in play, I guess really was what it is. So sometimes I see with younger actors, they feel more inhibited, and you really have to give them some really clear indications, like, you know, raise it up more, pull it down more. Can you give it a more push? I mean, a good director, I think, is always giving the actor the space to fill themselves and not giving them a line reading. No, say it like this, right? We look down on that. It doesn't really give the actor their autonomy to be able to play the part. But with younger actors, I find that a lot of times I do some demonstration. Like, here's how I would play it, right? And I'll get up and I'll be like, no, don't do that. No, right? And I say, okay, now, you know, you've kind of seen me throw myself into it 100% without hesitation, without fear. Now, what do you propose, right? And maybe they'll take some element of what I've just kind of like shown them, and they'll work with it. Or maybe they'll just, like, having seen me act like a fool, uninhibited, without fear of judgment or anything, they just freeze them up to do their own thing, and they kind of throw themselves into it, right? I would say my ideal is that I'm simply there to, like, tell them, okay, yeah, 10 degrees north, you know, okay, yeah, 3 more degrees south, to just really fine tune what they're doing.
Right.
My experience, what I've noticed is that younger actors don't have the same freedom in their movement and in what they propose as older actors who have more, or older performers or older players who have more experience and more confidence.
Yeah, they're more life experience in itself,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's huge, you know. You can't play a 40-year-old man when you're 15 because you just don't know what it's like to be 40, right? It's just a totally different game, right? Totally different game to be 40 than it is to be 30. They are fundamentally different. I don't know if did I answer your question?
Totally. I love it. And I also love the free flowing, ability for us to just to go way out. And I want to keep it interesting to our listeners. And I just want to draw more and more on your experience, because I feel like although some of our core listeners are role-playing games teachers, they could be history teachers, they could be language teachers, they could be math teachers. Right. And then they also have a role as a games teacher, but they also might be just teaching straight RPGs. So any little clues and hints, and again, not just in this conversation, but in future ones with others, we really want to bring out from our interviewees what they do, what their strategies are, what are things what are anecdotes and inspirations, strategies they have in their experience. And also, we really have to find our way. And I know that you and I have the ability to talk and go long-winded and really express ourselves or jump in on any little thing that we hear because we have something to add to it. But I also, it's been my journey as an interviewer, really trying to give over the space to the interviewee, and let them.
That's kind of one of the tricks of the trade, right?
Right. So be on your watch there, Shawnee.
Oh yeah, for the blah blah.
For the blah blah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, blah blah. I'm a big proponent of the blah blah blah.
So you brought out, and I like how this is going, and I think you can bring more, and we'll just see where it goes. You've brought out humor and laughter as one life skill, imagination as a second, flexibility as a third. Can you think of another one that comes to your mind that you employ or you deploy or you bring out in your students?
Well, one I think is a really profound empathy. A really profound empathy for other people. But not just other people, for all living beings, whether it's the animals around you or the insects that are plaguing you, or the plants that are near you. I think we know now more than ever, maybe the kind of interconnectedness of all life. And we stand on this precipice right now where so many people are tremendously suffering. So many ants and plants and animals and ants, really, this threat of extinction. And so that kindness and that empathy are absolutely necessary. For my own life, I've gone through so much hardship that it made me hard. And what I had to do, and what I have been in the process of doing since I started working in international schools with younger students, is learning to become more soft, learning to soften, empathy, bro, huge one, empathy.
So we have the softening.
Mm.
And, you kind of gave me kind of a little bit of a yin and a yang for each thing. What would you say if softening is one part of empathy? What's another one?
If softening is one part of empathy, another part is not being a goddamn doormat, having a real sense of yourself. It's not that you become like so kind, where all of a sudden you're just so kind and accepting and loving of all creatures that, you get to be the mat that everybody wipes their feet on. Well, I used to work at Glide Memorial Methodist Church in San Francisco. That was my first teaching gig at 20 years old, working, or maybe 21, working with, kids from the Tenderloin, from the inner city of San Francisco. They taught us there that if you are going to work in service, if you are going to work and do social work, you need to be selfish. You have to be selfish in the sense that you make sure that you are taken care of and you make sure you are stable before you are bending over backwards and trying to take care of everyone else.
So it's the
And-
Maslow's pyramid a bit. Make sure your needs are clean so that you can start to really help others, be supportive.
And because if they're not, you're not really able to. It's all just, a bunch of, it's just a house of cards, and sooner or later it's going to fall down and collapse.
Well, that's good advice. And I love it. And also in the future of interviews, I like this idea because I know that you think this way. And I think about these things too, a lot of times when I'm trying to put together curriculum and I'm thinking about skills or achievements or, what's good about this. I try to think about the opposite. Why would we not want to do this? Or what would we be actually actively preventing? And, or this kind of yin and yang of this. I love this empathy, softening versus not letting yourself be a doormat, a sense of self. Can we go to another skill? Do you have a fifth for me?
Nope, I only have 4 skills. That's it. No, of course. What did I say? I said empathy, imagination is that creativity, right?
Yeah, we got that one.
Humor, comedy, levity, lightness.
Maybe I could just speak to some. Maybe I could throw some out there to you. And you can.
No, there's one that's kind of, I think, within all of these, and is being like receptivity. To be receptive of what is around you, who is around you, but also like how you are around others and how you are in the place that you are. And to both kind of like know what it is that you're sensing and feeling, and then having some sense of intuition for what is happening around you. And not just in terms of like people, but in terms of movement, in terms of light and color, in terms of sound and rhythm, in terms of vibration, or, and that, color in the sense of emotion, to be very receptive to what's happening around you and to what's happening within you. I'd say that might be a fifth.
That's lovely.
And again, just to kind of give it the little counter swing, like you were saying before, the other side of that is not to be so receptive to everything around you that you are like, Jim Carrey supposedly losing himself in the role of Andy Kaufman. You have to, it's like, what is it in pool when you're shooting pool? 1 foot on the floor, right? That's the rule, right? It's always 1 foot on the floor. And I think it's like that as well with playing, with art, with spiritual trip, right? Yeah, you can be on the spiritual trip as much as you want. You can go and sit in the ashram. You can go to the prayer revival, but you got to keep one, you got to keep 1 foot on the floor, because
so the room doesn't spin around too much.
Yeah, so the room doesn't spin around too much, and it's like, we can sit here and talk about spirituality all day long, and then eventually we're going to be like, gosh, I'm so hungry. Yeah, me too. Yeah, let's go get some food, because there is like the grounding of the body and the physical reality saying, okay, yeah, you can be up philosophically in the clouds as much as you want, but it's time to get a glass of water.
Nice. Well, I really, really enjoyed this chat. And
thanks for the call, brother.
Let's bring this to a conclusion, and we can obviously have more. I really enjoyed talking with you. I feel a levity in my heart as I consider this last 40 or so minutes of talking to you about versatility and flexibility and supreme adaptability, and seeing what is beyond what is right in front of my nose and the possibilities that are just waiting around the corner in my imagination and creativity, the softening of my empathy, the sense of self. I appreciate the reminder not to be a doormat, because we all need that reminder. And at the same time, that universal receptivity of others and of myself and how I'm doing, what's happening around me, the movement, the light, the color, the sound, the rhythm, the emotions. And of course, not to lose myself, and just keep 1 foot on the floor, as you say, to stay grounded. By staying grounded with 1 foot, maybe I can fly in another way. Maybe Maybe at one moment I can be the balloon high above, floating around like a kite, and yet be she or he or they who are standing on the ground holding and guiding that kite, grounded.
Yeah, that's the idea, man. Right.
And feeling the wind through the current, just that one string that's connecting those bodies, those one outflowing in the wind and one very clearly on the ground. I really adore you and love talking with you. So let's do it again. And
cool. Give me a shout, Mr. Zach, and it's been a pleasure to talk with you. In our conversation, I've been on a little journey with this painting. I've made it look worse. I've made it look better. I've saved it. I've saved it and then I've ruined it again a few different times. That's okay. This is all the underpainting anyway. But it's been a pretty good little session with you here. Thank you for your invitation, Zach. And I look forward to our conversation in its next incarnation.
Super. Thanks very much. Talk to you soon, Shawn, and tuning out here from Teacher Gamer Podcast. See you guys next time.
Signing out.
Hope you enjoyed it. And again, we would love to see you at our training sessions that are coming up. Please reach out to me, Zach at teachergamer.com, or check us out on Instagram or LinkedIn and send me a message, and would love to see you join our class. We hope you've enjoyed the Teacher Gamer Podcast, a Wild Mind training production. Text and production copyright 2021 to 2025 by Wild Mind Training for Teacher Gamer Revolution. All rights reserved.